So welcome to everybody to our webinar hosted by the SEAT Network, asking big questions about live streaming. I'm Lisa Brown, and I'm the Director of Digital Ministry for Membership Vision. And we've been fielding a lot of questions about live streaming in the past, let's say, 10 days or so. And so we thought it made sense to gather a panel of experts coming from different contexts to talk about this kind of brave new world we've all been thrust into, willingly or unwillingly. So that really is kind of my first question, even though, and the panelists are going to introduce themselves as they address this question. And even though the title of this webinar was live streaming from nice to have to necessity, really my first question for everybody is this indeed a necessity? And I'm going to ask Sarah to start us off, because that was really the first thing that she asked me when we talked about being on this panel. So Sarah, take it away.
So my name is Sarah Stonecipher Boylan. I am the digital missioner and manager of the manager of operations for the lifelong learning department at Virginia Theological Seminary. I feel like I've been doing that intro forever, and yet I still keep tripping over it today. So my whole spiel is that not everybody actually needs to be live streaming. There are many other organizations that are set up to do it in a snap, but a lot of us our communities were not set up to do it. And just because you want to connect with your people and reach out to them spiritually does not mean that it needs to be done via live streaming a service. That can mean that it's by Bible study or Christian formation classes or coffee hour chats. There are lots of other ways to connect and not just always live streaming. I am of a bare bones kind of setup here. I just got myself a light ring, so that's why my skin looks so dewy. But other than that, I'm using exactly what I have before me, my iPad, phone, and computer. So nothing else is fancy. So that's sort of where I come from, is the very minimalistic setup. Let's do it and do it quick and get it set up.
All right, thanks. And I'm gonna tag Missy Moraine, because I know that where she's coming from in her context, it may not be minimalist, and go with what you have.
So, hi, I am Missy Moraine. I am the Director of Christian Formation. No, I'm not. I'm the Director of Program Ministry at the Parish of St. Matthew in Pacific Palisades, which is the Diocese of Los Angeles. I started as Director of Christian Formation, but my job grew, as many people's do. And I think what Lisa is referencing is that I am in West LA, where people are used to high quality productions, which is not to say that that's what we necessarily have. So for us, was it necessary to live stream? Probably not. Is it the best option for us? Yes. And we are doing it in a number of different capacities, both for our Wednesday morning service and for both of our Sunday services. And whereas I would really like to be in the let's do it and get it done easy, where Sarah is definitely living from, and it's where I'm living from at home, it's less of what we're doing on Sunday morning, and we're integrating more and more pieces each week. Directly after this, I'm going to go work on how we're integrating our sound system into our live stream, partially because we have a phenomenal building that is really built for music, which makes it a little bit harder for sound. And we have the unique gift of, even though in California we are in a stay-at-home order, that we have a number of clergy and staff residences on the campus. So stay at home for several of our staff is still at church.
Thank you. And I'm going to call on Lorenzo next to talk to us about what you're experiencing.
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Lorenzo Labrica. I'm the founding director of TriTank, the Experimental Laboratory for Church Growth and Innovation. And when all this first started happening, we created both in English and Spanish, a little video, how to get onto Facebook Live in 4 easy steps, and like 17,000 people, both here in the US and in the Church of England, watched it, which is great. That's awesome. But what's happening now is that we're now in sort of like phase 2, which is we got a lot of people onto Facebook Live, and now we need to ask the questions like, should everyone really be on Facebook Live? You know, it's just because we can do it doesn't necessarily mean that. The good news is we have more prayer going on online than I think I've ever seen from the Episcopal Church. We have churches that are they're asking like, how do you do morning prayer? Because apparently we need to do that. Everyone's doing it, which is great. But I think that now into week number 2 or 3 of this lockdown and this quarantine that looks like it's going to go on for a little bit longer, we need to start asking ourselves, how do we do it better? And I would suggest that, and this is what TriTech is going to help sort of try to do, is like there's a couple of things that we can do to become better. We can come up with a digital schedule that makes sense. As Sarah mentioned, there are a lot of people that are doing a lot of things. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do exactly what everyone else is doing to be on morning prayer, evening prayer, compline, everything else is being done. But rather, to be church, to hold people together, you can use Zoom to bring people together, to do a prayer group, to do a Bible study, to do things where people see each other and are with each other. The actual prayer will probably be better done by a cathedral that can use more things rather than me in my room because I'm on lockdown and I can't go out and I'm doing it from here. So come up with a schedule that makes sense. Second, I think that we can actually become better digital filmmakers. It doesn't take much for us to be able to create what people want to see in the local setting. And this is important. Since we're not doing communion through Zoom, the Lord be with you, right? What we can do is the message, the word and the homily. So if we're able to perhaps just put that out there on Sunday morning so that people in 7 to 12 minutes can get the local person that they know to reassure them that during these times, like this Sunday's readings are about Ezekiel, that we know Scripture speaks to the moment that we're in. So how do we make that better? So we can do those videos better, and it doesn't take much for us to be able to do that. We don't have to do the whole service where you can barely hear anything, where it's just sort of from afar. We can get better at this, and that's kind of the hope that we can do this. And then the third part to this, and then I'll be done with this, is I think this allows us an opportunity to reach new audiences locally. If we do produce better digital content, then by using the incredibly deep tools that Facebook offers, we can reach people who would be welcoming to our message, but who we're not currently reaching. But we need to make sure that what we're putting out there is of a certain, and I don't mean like caliber, like Missy was saying that we need to, Missy happens to be in an area where there's a lot of Fox executives and Paramount executives, and they're expecting like, the green screens and everything else, but so that it is authentic to who we are, but still is done in a way that people don't mind receiving it that way. After a while of just watching the little camera and the person just standing up and you can barely hear them, a week or 2 later, they're going to stop doing that. And that's going to be the end of people watching your live stream.
And I could just go ahead. Let's go ahead and jump right in. My name is Merrill Watley. I'm the president of Membership Vision. And I want to just, first of all, welcome everyone to their 9,000th Zoom meeting that they've had in the last 2 weeks. And I need to get more comfortable earbuds because they hurt from all of this. What everyone has said so far, I think, is exactly in line with kind of what I'm experiencing and what I'm seeing through churches. I want to expand on what Lorenzo was saying a little bit, this idea of kind of what phase we're in right now. When this first happened, I think the most important thing was connection. And it was something that felt regular and something that felt comforting to people to be able to connect. And the little mantra that we have with a few churches was connection over perfection. Let's make sure that we can do this. And when people were trying to live stream, a whole lot of churches last week had this issue where they said, okay, we're going to do it over Zoom and we're going to live stream to either Facebook Live or YouTube. And Zoom's connections out to Facebook and YouTube did not work. And a lot of people weren't able to do it. An idea that you had to go from saying, oh, we're going to have 4 or 5 people doing a service to being able to back up and go to the bare bones thing and just go right to YouTube or Facebook and click that camera button and start. It was really, really important. Now, one of the questions that's coming up now is it important that we do it live? I mean, can we record this and put it out there if we want to? I know initially there were a lot of people that were referring people to larger churches who, kind of did it really, really well. I still do think that it's important that your people have the ability to connect to the people they know. Again, does it have to be, the big service every week? Does it have to be live? Those are a lot of great questions. And I'm assuming that as we go along, some of those questions will come up over here in the sidebar.
Great. And I mean, I think this really frames the conversation really well for all of us. And just as a side note, when we're talking about making the decision of, do we, as Meryl mentioned, there's a reassurance in connecting with our people, but does it have to be us watching our people worship? One thing I heard was churches organizing watch parties to say, well, this Sunday, all of us here at St. Paul's in Pittsburgh are going to go watch the National Cathedral feed or something like that, and organizing watch parties around them so that we can still interact with one another and talk about the service, but actually have this different worship experience. So I thought that was a cool idea. I think, where the majority of the questions have come up, now that we really have framed it, is regardless of what we're doing, let's maybe walk people through some of the technical opportunities that exist and touch a little bit on the pros and cons, of how we get there and what setup that we need for this to work kind of optimally, and what's our minimum, and what are we shooting for. And I'm going to invite anyone who really wants to jump in on that to go ahead and jump on in.
The one thing that I would add to that, to your question as to what works best in the technical, because answering the question that Meryl was posing is, do you want to be live? Do you have to be live? Versus do you want to be, and I think there's a couple of things. One is being out there on Zoom to do meetings and doing Bible study is different than producing something to be like a worship that you want to put out there that people will more sort of be receptive as, not participants, but just more on the receiving end of it, and will pray on their own. And so obviously the meetings, those have to be live. It would be really weird if I'm in a meeting that everyone else is recorded, right? But the worship service, whether you're going to do morning prayer or whether you're going to do just the liturgy of the word or the full Eucharist, you don't have to do it live. You can, and Sarah is going to be doing a program on Facebook Premiere, right? Where you can actually put it, record it, edit it. It takes away a lot of the stress of, is everything right? Is the connection going to work? As more people are online right now, the bandwidth is stretched to its max. And so it just takes a lot of the stress. You can also get a little bit creative by having a gimbal and getting a better, different shot of the person. You can actually do some digital filmmaking with it to add a little music soundtrack, as long as you get the rights, so that you can use that. And that just makes it better and easier for people to receive that content than if you always just, for the sake of being live. And with Premiere, on Facebook Premiere, you actually just keep it in the can and then you feed it live. So it feels live, but you actually pre-produce the program. So that's what I would suggest is, notice the difference between the two. One is just the meetings, which Zoom is great for. The other one is where you're producing a worship experience for people at home. And how can you do the best of that? I would suggest that you don't do it live, but rather record it, make it better, and then put it out.
And I would say you're absolutely right, and I want to expand on that and also name kind of the elephant in the room for what it is that Holy Week is coming up for all of us. So as we're looking at how we're doing worship, I think we're looking at all of Holy Week and saying, what are we doing around the whole Holy Week experience? So let's kind of keep that in mind as we're answering these questions. And I know, Missy, you were just in a meeting of that. Do you want to chime in on that, or anyone else?
We're still in the midst of determining that. We had done, as great church planning staffs do, done our Lent and Holy Week planning in January, because I came back from sabbatical and said, hey, let's plan, which I take weird pleasure in, I think. But of course, all of that has gone right out the window, because what does it look like? And we're still discerning that. We're still figuring out what is the experience that we want people to have, knowing that that they're not with us, that we're not going to have our scout program making 500 palm crosses on the Saturday before, so that we can hand them to everybody. What does the Liturgy of the Palms look like when we're doing it digitally? What does the stripping of the altar on Maundy, Thursday look like when we have to stay 6 feet away from each other? And we're still figuring pieces of that out. The big question for me is the question of, which isn't new historically, but sure feels new on the west side of LA, of how do we celebrate the resurrection when we may still feel entombed ourselves? And if you haven't seen the resources, if you haven't had the opportunity to look at it, I do really suggest that you take a look at the resources that Lisa Kimball and James Farwell put together out of VTS, which I'm guessing Sarah might be able to connect us to. Thank you, Sarah. You can see in the chat box of how do we do the Triduum under quarantine. And I can tell you we're still figuring that out. I know we're going to do a combination of giving people tools to do service or do components of that at home, and to be able to do them live and with recordings probably.
There's some great things in the sidebar in the chat box over here that are going by that touch on some of what we're talking about here that I think are important to highlight really quick. And Robin Hodgkins has been putting some great comments over here about what they're doing, but also mentions this point about revenue loss when not connecting to congregation vis-a-vis pointing to another church. She says, we've opted for maintaining the church's relationship to the people. I say she, I'm sorry if Robin is a he. When we're talking about Facebook Live and YouTube and these different ways of delivering this content, I think that there's another thing to think about there. I'm a proponent of doing at least a service either through YouTube Live and having a permanent embed on your website so that you can have people in your environment where you can have a giving button and you can have all that sort of stuff, as opposed to always pushing it out to Facebook. Not that Facebook doesn't have tools there, but when people have that expectation that that's where they're going to go, with a lot of our clients, what we've been doing is setting up a page, which is, their website.org/live. And you go to that page, and there are a lot of things you can do to schedule upcoming events in YouTube Live, and then you can just have a single block of code that you put on your site that you never have to change. So you don't have to go in every time you're doing a new presentation to update it. I think thinking about those sorts of things is, again, we want to reach out. We want to go beyond the walls. We don't want people to have to necessarily come to our website and all that stuff. Things that were true a month ago are going to be true in a couple of months from now again, which is, people don't necessarily want to consume, a service, so to speak, by sitting there and staring at someone speaking a sermon. They're going to want to get back to podcasting when they're back, exercising and taking their kids to school and, driving, all that sort of stuff. They're going to be able to listen to you on the go. So don't let go of all those things. And it goes back to another question that Robin had earlier, which was, are we really talking about during this time, or are we talking about at all times? What are we doing when it comes to live streaming? And I think it's a good question. I think that's, we need to remember that we could not have seen where we are now a month ago. Not exactly. A lot of people knew it was coming, but we couldn't have really seen this. And we don't necessarily know exactly what it's going to be like a month from now. So be flexible when it comes to that, but always do think about how do we keep people not only connected with each other and feeling good, but connected to the running of the church and so forth.
Sure. trying to think about a good way to go kind of next. What are some of the common glitches that we see and how can we avoid them? You know, I think sometimes, you know, I know in business school and all that, you learn more from the examples that they say to you, you know, where do you really mess up? And hearing kind of how other people approach them. And also, I think that helps everybody know that you're not alone. And, you know, the glitches are going to happen. It's all how we deal with them. So anybody want to fess up? Confession time.
Oh, I'll confess, this past Sunday, I was filling in a service and oh man, and I went like all out. And I was like, we're not just gonna broadcast it, I'm gonna put it on OBS and I'm gonna have pre-recorded segments. I want people from the congregation, so I had them do the readings and they gave them to me on Saturday and I dropped them in and I had music and I had a blessing from the bishop at the end. And then I forgot to turn on my microphone for half the service. Yeah. So there you go, it happens. And that's, by the way, that is exactly, if ever you needed this is why we should pre-record it, is because that would not have happened. I would be able to be like, oh, let me just record it again. So you don't have to be live. Again, that I think that the errors make the point. And there's easier ways. There are simple solutions. You can get an omnidirectional microphone for like $15. If you're just using your phone to broadcast and that's all you have, which is great, that you don't need much more. You can get a wireless microphone if you want to spend about $140, or you can get a $15 omnidirectional microphone that you just put closer to you and it captures you. There's other ways of doing it that make it simple, but still sound and look better.
And I think to speak to those mistakes, that when they happen and when the glitchy things occur, I'll tell you, this past Sunday, I was watching the live stream from my own church, and the rector's 13-year-old son was in charge of the iPad, and he hit that button where it reverses the camera. And for a split second, we saw this horrified face of this 13-year-old, like, oh, shoot. And that was kind of my favorite moment of the service. You know, we've seen that one where the priest in Italy doesn't realize he's on Facebook Live, but he set all the funny hats and faces and stickers. I'm thinking we make this a thing, but that's, you know, that's just me. So Lorenzo, you mentioned some specific kind of tech tips. So either, let's talk about, like I said, either we're still open for glitches and admissions, but what are some of the best tips that you've heard for the setup to make all this go smoothly? And I know Meryl's done a lot of work around settings for Zoom, and I know Sarah is a wealth of information around Zoom settings and how to address that. Anybody kind of want to chime in on, so, you know, what are some of the best tips that you've heard?
I think something that I can't say enough is be authentic, which is what Lisa experienced, of where that poor 13-year-old PK had that terrified moment of like, oh no, I am the one who messed up the service. All of it was on my shoulders, of recognizing that like those moments of humanity are part of our community, are part of our communities of faith. And so that's really important to keep in mind. And so that could mean that, you know, it could be, as I put in the chat box, it could be families and households telling the Easter story and marking that as part of our journey of us learning what it means to be family together and apart during the sacred time. And I would definitely make sure that you know your tech before you enter into it. And that can mean that, you know, you are trying things out, but making sure that you have a little bit of a buffer. As we enter into these spaces, there are a lot of our people who don't know what a Zoom meeting is and who don't understand what the difference between a webinar and a meeting is. And recognizing that and using it as a building block is really important. And being consistently welcoming wherever we are, even if it is just a pre-recorded video, of saying, you know, we are here, we continue to pray. I know that you are continuing to pray as well, and hope that you continue with us. Not saying that, you know, we can see Meryl and we can see Joe praying with us, but recognizing that, you know, it can be watched afterwards as well. And so continuing all of those options, I think are really important, and continue to make the opportunity for people to learn and experience church in new ways.
And there is, of course, a this is a great opportunity to work on Christian formation of what makes church. You know, I heard it yesterday. It said the temple is closed. The church is still very much open, right? So just reminding people of what our theology is about the communion, what our theology is. It's an opportunity to, and also to empower lay people. Some of the resources that were provided in that Tridium workshop that Missy mentioned are all about empowering the lay people to say, you can do this in your home. You can do Maundy Thursday and Good Friday, and well, A, you're going to have to, but B, it's okay to do that and to be empowered in doing that, because we are all part of the body of Christ and we can all do this. And that's what's so great about this also, as an opportunity.
One of my favorite things is crowdsourcing playlists. And Kyle Oliver, who was in Sarah's position before Sarah arrived, has always done this. And, you know, I wait every year for Kyle Oliver to send out on Facebook and say, hey, suggest to me songs that make you think of Pentecost, not hymns, but, you know, any kind of song. And I know that when that happens, that my productivity is done for the day, because I'm going to spend the day, you know, thinking about Johnny Cash, Ring of Fire, or whatever. And I wait then to see what he comes out with. And it's not only the song that I suggested, but I love to see what other people suggested and how they interpreted it. So it's again, it's about that connection. So that might be something people want to think about for over Holy Week, doing some crowdsourcing of playlists for Holy Week, asking people about the different themes for Holy Week and what songs that triggers for them and suggests to them, and then compile that and release that to your folks. So when they're safely taking their laps around their neighborhood with the dog, they're not only listening to that, but they're also knowing who suggested it and forming those connections.
When it comes to Easter specifically, one church is having people send in Easter photos, whether it's Easter photos from years past or they're at home and they all get dressed up and take a photo because they're not going to be going to the Easter service. And they're going to be sharing that on the broadcast that they're doing for Easter Sunday, which will be pre-recorded. And a couple of things have gone by here in this sidebar that I want to talk about. Todd, I just see where you mentioned you want to figure out how to do a better online service. And there's a lot of great comments coming in over here. The number one thing I agree with David, sorry, I got to find it. David Deutsch, is sound. You want your sound to be good. Mic yourself, as Lorenzo was saying, you can get a wireless mic. Even if you're using something like these earbuds, it's so much better. Be aware of if you're wearing something like a zipper button or something that can interfere with that microphone, because you won't notice it, but it will harm people. If there's a zipper rubbing against your mic the whole time. So there's a lot of good advice in the Episcopal Communicators channel that I've seen for people who are part of that. But there's a wealth of information I'm already seeing here in the sidebar. And each of us, I think when it comes to those technical things, those technical type questions, Todd, that it might be almost a one-on-one kind of, there's so many variables. We don't know what you're using, what equipment you do have, and so on and so forth. Back to the question about things that can go wrong and everything. I just want to mention, Sarah has talked about this. I've talked about it a few times. It's very important, especially when you're dealing with children, and if you're doing a Sunday school service, a Sunday school or anything like that through Zoom, that you put some safeguards in place, that you're not publicly sharing the link so that anyone can get to it. That you have your Zoom settings to not allow screen sharing by participants automatically. This isn't as nearly as fun as the other examples of mess ups that people were talking about, but a school system near us out here in California, they were doing online learning and they did not set that. They did not turn off the screen sharing, and there was Nazi imagery that was shared over a school service for hundreds of students. So I think Sarah just put a great Safe Church and Online Spaces video link. Check that out. I'll let that do the talking.
And I think my mistakes, oh, Sarah, go ahead.
No, please, Missy.
My mistakes have been small but mighty. We've been live streaming our sermons for a number of years. So we've had some times to work those kinks out. But I still sometimes do ridiculous things, like not entirely conscious of where my feet are in relationship to where the tripod is, and trip over the tripod and make things jiggle. Also, when I lose my sense of humor and lose my cool, as a whole bunch of complaints are coming in, which are happening less and less now. And really, I'm trying to work on thinking them less of as less complaints and more people who want to be helpful. But things like, you know, getting the email after we get done that says, really, you should be using multiple camera angles. And, you know, when I keep my sense of humor, I think of things like installing wire rigging in the church, which then I can descend upon with like an angel with a flaming sword later. But, you know, getting an email from somebody after the service that doesn't say anything other than, really, you need to have better quality video and be using multiple camera angles. I know they're being helpful, but if I'm not looking at it with those eyeballs on and those ears, it does make me go, are you kidding me? I'm trying. We're doing the best that we can. And so part of it is keeping my non-anxious sense, keeping a sense of humor, remembering that what we're doing is trying to help the disciples that are a part of our community continue to follow Jesus in a time when it feels very much like Holy Saturday. And when we all may be slightly more tense and grumpy.
I want to do a quick note about the chat. There's a lot of good stuff happening in the chat, but unfortunately the panelists are the only ones that can see it. So if everybody goes down to the chat box, there's a little blue bar that might say all panelists. So toggle down, so press the little caret, and then make sure that you are sending messages to all panelists and attendees. So that way everybody can see the questions, and so that way everybody can also then respond to them. So I know like David's message just came to all panelists. So please, David, go ahead and send it out to all panelists and attendees. So I know that I'm an active user of the chat box because I have my librarian, I need to give resources to everybody. I think that the plan is maybe to send out a follow-up email. Is that correct, Lisa and Joe? Awesome. So all of these comments that are in the chat box, as well as the technical suggestion like Lorenzo with Wii video or everything else, so that way those will all be sort of curated for you. So we'll call them out of there. So it is not a problem. I would definitely say anything that you're doing, try it out. I know somebody asked about how do we know about Zoom meetings. You gotta try it out. I was on a phone call earlier where somebody mentioned my abilities with Zoom. It's because I've been using it for over 4 years, and I've been hosting webinars for over 4 years. So my Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours tipping point, like I'm pretty much at 10,000 hours. So that can mean that, you know, the person who started last week will not be at my 10,000 hours, but there are a lot of amazing resources out there. And the most important thing is that you try it out and you really do understand about where we are coming from and meeting your community on that same level of saying, we're trying a new thing. We're going to try online book study, and we're going to try online small groups, and we're going to try online coffee hours. So then that way we can be together. And naming that, I think, is a really important understanding. Somebody mentioned that they are doing a stripped down service. That's great. You can do a stripped down service and just have it online, recognizing that it won't be the same as if you were in your sacred space of your nave and around your altar, but recognizing that our online spaces can also be sacred. Whenever I do a webinar or do a meeting with church people, I always try to start with maybe a Bible study, maybe a little psalm and prayer. So then that way it designates why we are here, that we are here to be deeper in conversation and community with each other, as well as with Jesus, again, as we're approaching our Passion time and approaching our Easter Sunday. That will be different. A lot of options are coming through, and so I just want to make sure that everyone is anxious. And I think that that's something that I've recognized over the past few weeks. Realize that there are so many resources out there. You just have to Google correctly. It won't be coming from church people most of the time. And so I want to ensure you that I swear the answers are out there. I am doing quick how-to videos because there are some church people who like to hear from church people about how to do it, but know that in my best educator way and librarian way is that you are stealing for good, for good options and for good how-tos. Karen, I have a video on what the difference is between a meeting and webinar. I would go ahead and bring up that playlist so then that way you can see it. And again, so know that everything, it will all be okay. Try it out, like make mistakes as we are all talking about, and know that if you are authentic, that people are gonna come with you.
I love that summary right there. A couple of things that kind of popcorned up as things were going by. There's been a lot of questions about music and the sound quality of music and having musicians elsewhere. And somebody posted on Episcopal Communicators, and I have the link and I will get it out here somewhere, that a conductor or somebody of an orchestra in Denmark or something like that was talking about special settings. Sarah's shaking her head. No, not good?
No, I was shaking my head at Lorenzo, who's private messaging me.
Behave. Okay, I'm losing control of my panelists, not that I ever had control. Anyhow, this guy was posting different settings to get a better quality from Zoom. So again, to speak to Sarah's point, there's a lot of good information out there. Episcopal Communicators is a great resource. eFormation, where Sarah is posting all her videos, great source. Meryl's been making little 1-minute videos, quick videos that we're posting on our Facebook page and sharing it to Episcopal Communicators. So a lot of good stuff out there.
Well, Lisa, don't forget Forma, the Forma Facebook page.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could forget the important one. The Forma, F-O-R-M-A, if you're not already familiar, is just a wealth of, it's a wealth of everything, but it's a wealth of how are you engaging formation in this time period? How are you helping your congregation to follow Jesus? How are you serving as disciples?
And the two other little points that I want to make, and I'm going to follow up on, that's a good point, and I definitely want to follow up on that. When Sarah talked about, this is a new way of being for a lot of people. She is definitely at expert level, and I've been living this life for a couple of years too. So all of us are used to having, sore ears and learning how much energy it takes to project yourself into the digital space, sometimes more so than sitting in a meeting with people. And I think the intentionality of gathering is really important. If you're gathering for a Bible study, a vestry meeting, one of the 5 bazillion reasons we gather at church, as you're all walking in and everybody's chit-chatting and you're catching up, and there's that organic time where you connect with one another. That's really important to build into your online meetings, because we're used to when a meeting starts, let's get down to business. Because we've already had that time while we're getting our coffee and walking in we all know the church parking lot conversations. That's where the real deal gets done, right? So in our Zoom meetings, we have to build that time in as well. And sometimes it seems like we're taking an excessive amount of time to say, we're going to go around and, everybody chime in on whatever the prompt is. But that's really important. And then to follow up on the comment that Missy just made about the formation aspects of it and the discipleship aspects of all this. We just had a conversation last night about how, Easter morning, the resurrection wasn't obvious, and it wasn't, we're looking at it from a lens of, we know this is happening. We know Easter morning is coming. But at the time, when we talk about, we all feel like we're in this eternal Lent and we're stuck in Saturday. Even on Sunday morning, people weren't really sure what was going on yet. And I think we have to remember that Easter is a season. And what this all will be and how it will go down will continue to reveal throughout the entire season of Easter. So it doesn't have to happen, boom, Easter morning. You know, we don't need immediate epiphanies and enlightenment. Anything else people want to chime in on? Go, Meryl, go.
I do, and I'm going to kind of take an opportunity to take someone's comment and question over here and throw it to a couple other panelists. I want to say it was Larry R. A moment ago asked, you know, is there going to be some technical advice given here, you know, about some of these things? And I think, again, while we don't want to start going down that rabbit hole because there's so many rabbit holes that we could go down, I think, and he was referring specifically to Zoom. I know that Sarah has done a lot of work on some of these short videos talking about Zoom. I've put a couple of videos out myself about Zoom, especially as it relates to Sunday school, and I'll dig that up in a minute. But I've also seen, Lorenzo, that you've been doing some different kind of testing with Mevo cameras and stuff like that. And I didn't know if you wanted to maybe talk about that for just a second when we are talking about trying to improve the quality of what we're putting out there.
Sure. You know, what's interesting is a Mevo camera, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is basically one camera that allows you to get a wide shot, and then on your phone you control whether you want just this little corner or that little corner. So it sort of seems like it zooms in, but it's just still the wide shot. It just selects which part of it. It's really cool to use as a camera, but it's a $400 camera. You don't need it. The cameras that are available on our phones are sometimes better than that. But when it comes to the sound, and I think it was Jay who mentioned this in the comments, this is it's a Sabinitech smart mic, and what this is a wireless microphone that I can put on my shirt, for example, and it goes wirelessly to my phone. So if my phone is 5-7 feet away, to get a better shot, a wider shot, because here's I don't know if this is technical advice, but if you're preaching, 2 little tips on that. One, do it standing up. Your energy will always be different as a preacher when you're standing up as when you're sitting down. And 2, you remember the movie with Wilson? And have something that represents your people, so that you're looking not just at a camera, but right off camera is little Wilson, and you can be talking to Wilson. I also happen to have the little eyes that I sometimes use, and they're, well, I'm doing fine with this quarantine. I don't know what you people are talking about. I'm just fine during the quarantine. Anyway, so, but those 2 things make a huge difference, that you're talking to people. You remember, and you actually calm down a little bit, and you remember, oh, I'm talking to Susie and to Bob and the people that I know, and they know me and I love them. But to get better sound, few things will beat. I mean, the difference in sound, if you have this versus me trying to scream 7 feet away into the camera, it's immense. And even if you don't have this, just use your computer and use your headphones. Just make sure the sound is incredibly important as you're doing that. On the Mevo camera, can give you then you start to get, this is something like Missy would want, because you get different angles and you can do different things with it, and it starts to get more Hollywood as you're doing it.
Lorenzo, don't give my people ideas. Don't give the congregation ideas.
As we speak, they're writing you Dear Missy, I heard about this Mevo camera. Why do we not have 3? So but Sarah mentioned it's about authenticity. Technically, I would suggest, if I were doing a service this Sunday, I would pre-record it. And I would just use my phone and a standard, just a little sort of, these are the Jacko, right? That can hang on to anything, but just a tripod that can hold on to it. If you are so inclined and happen to have, you could even use, I have a gimbal that I can use for different shots and like move around and show around just for like some B-roll. And all of this using WeVideo, you can put it all, look, oh, some people are just showing off at Pacific Palisades, I'm just saying. And all of this you put together, let your creative juices flow a little bit. You can get, oh, look at you with your more expensive one than mine by a lot. But you can actually use music that they would use, Blue Dot Sessions, Google Blue Dot Sessions. They have music that you can use that for underneath music, if you want to have a little music that's playing underneath, so that you're not just So you can add elements to it that are easy to do, not expensive, and all of a sudden you go from having your far away phone that can barely hear you to having something that people won't mind sharing. And I'm just going to say this again. This is an opportunity also for us, if we use lookalike audiences from our Facebook page and other things, to get new people in our communities to hear and know about us. We have a message of hope. We have a message that is inspiring right now. And if we just do a better job of putting it together, because you don't want to send them to a bad video because they'll be like, I don't want to go to that place. But if you're doing a good job and you put something together that's nicely when you're talking to your own Wilson, then people will respond to that and they'll be like, I like that priest woman. She's good. I want to go to that church when all this is done.
Somebody had a question about inserting, as we're making these videos, and inserting them into a live webcast. Best techniques for that. I'm going to throw that to our panelists. Oh, Sarah, go. Do you know that?
I use, Sarah, go ahead.
I was going to say a lot of people have been using OBS or Switcher Studio in order to do that. I think Switcher Studio in particular, as Lorenzo will attest, works with iOS with Apple devices. And so you can, I think this was what Lorenzo was using last week. No, you were using OBS.
I use OBS, and because I have Apple devices, it didn't work all the way. So I had some
lessons learned.
Yeah.
The Switcher Studio is for all Macs all the time, which I'm sure Meryl might have Meryl, do y'all suggest OBS? Because I know that you guys are more PC.
Actually, I'm a Mac, all Mac through and through, but we try to work with things on all platforms. And so, yeah, I would, suggest looking into OBS. Just know though, that it's one of those things that you need to be able to get under the hood and do a lot of work to make it do what you want to.
But you can learn it in one day. I did, and it's not that. And can I just share my screen for a second and share that part? I can share a little bit of, so you can see what OBS sort of looks like. And this is it. I'm sharing with you. This is what the screen on OBS looks like. This was the pre-screen, and all these were controlled with Shift 1, Shift 2. I could go to Shift, and it would show my microphone. It would show me, this is me. This is what people saw on screen. The open that we had prepared actually had other parts. We had our mission statement, which was an actual video. I've now since removed them all, but we had music that was there. We had a whole bunch of other things, the lessons, the readings that were there, the gospel, all of it was there. And I was just going from one video to the other. And that way people were able to, oh yeah, Sarah?
Hey, Lorenzo, why would anybody need this?
You don't need it.
What does it do?
It creates,
like, just break it down.
You would do it if you have different elements, video elements, that you want to put together into one sort of broadcast. So if you want to have your people at home read the readings, and then you bring those in and drop them in as they do the first reading, the second reading, you can do all that together in OBS and create one broadcast. When I was doing Inside General Convention, that's what they use to do those national broadcasts. But you certainly don't need it. And the one thing also to add, if you're confused about anything, YouTube is a wonderful source. How do I, and type in whatever you're trying to figure out, there will be a video about how to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to leave. I want to point back to what Lorenzo was talking about. I'm pointing that way because on my screen, he's that way. About the evangelism opportunity within all of this. Which we've talked a lot about. How are we doing this for our congregations? But I also really don't want to leave out that this is an opportunity for evangelism, that when we're showcasing our best, and our best doesn't mean the most high quality post-production that there is, but that it does mean the piece where Sarah was talking about our authentic selves. It does mean that we are living into the fact that the lessons right now, that the Word of God, that the Bible really does lend itself to this place where we are living now. Last week we had our first vestry meeting in this reality. And I was amused and somewhat terrified by the vestry really talking about how much they're sharing our worship services, sharing our bedtime stories and prayers, which we do on Facebook, sharing how much of the content that we're generating with people who are nowhere near us. I got a little scared when they went, wow, we should be doing this all the time. And I really wanted to go, great, hire somebody to do that. But at the same time, didn't want to lose the fact that they are seeing this, that members of the congregation are seeing this as an opportunity to share with their friends who aren't churched or who are in different locations, to say, look at what my congregation does. Look at how we can follow Jesus. That as Episcopalians, I think we get very scared about evangelism sometimes. And this is an easy way to live into evangelism in a way that we live into it all the time, that we always share things. That yesterday during morning prayer, our homilist talked about the homily sermon that Nadia Bowles-Weber had put out just a few days before about fear. And that this is a way for us to evangelism at a time that's unusual, but in a way that our congregations and our people are intimately familiar with, which is just sharing videos and sharing images. So I don't want to, in the midst of talking about all the technology, lose that this is really, the goal of this is sharing Jesus and sharing how we follow Jesus.
Go ahead, Lorenzo.
No, I was just saying, preach it, preach it.
Well, and that's, I think we've got this opportunity, instead of saying, well, when we get back to normal, how is this going to inform what is the new normal? And what are the opportunities that we now have, as Missy noted, to really expand how we do evangelism and how we share our stories and the broader stories. So I think that's really important. And, you know, certainly we can go down many technological rabbit holes. And I think it's a reminder to people that you have resources to help you. As you're asking these questions, there are people, you're looking at 5 of them, who are always happy to help and, you know, help you sort this stuff out. I want to be conscious of kind of at the end of our time, so I don't know if we want to take, I mean, we've been taking questions all along, so I don't know if we want to kind of popcorn some final questions or some final, you know, what's the best tips you heard, or, you know, words of encouragement. We'll kind of moving towards that.
I think lots of +1s for OBS. So that's good to know. So it's just Lorenzo. But that's okay, Lorenzo. You'll have another opportunity to try it out.
I would just remind you to make sure your microphone is not switched off. That's the only thing. But and keep in mind that it's also, and this also happens when you're broadcasting from Zoom onto Facebook Live, there's a 10-second delay. So just know that people aren't going to see you right away. And so if you're trying to do it for interactivity, there will always be that lag. Zoom is the best. And Missy, also, one of the things we could offer that I haven't done it because I don't have a church, but if somebody, and I just thought of it, but if somebody has a church and you're going to do something, just hold a space for people on Zoom and put it out on Facebook and say, hey, I'm Father Lorenzo from St. Swithins, and I want to invite you, if you just want someone to pray with you from your house, just join me, be present, and we will pray together with you, and we'll just hold the space together. And I think that is one of the best things that church can do at this time, is just hold space with people who are anxious, who are scared, and just be that calming presence that says we believe in a God who will stand by us through all of this. We might feel like we're in exile, we might feel like we're lost, but God is with us, and that's comforting. And so,
yeah, next week we start, I think, kind of office hours 4 days a week at different times. So it's Monday morning with Missy, or lunch, or coffee hour with the virtual coffee hour with the rector. I thought of it personally as an idea for all of those parents I know who are now crisis homeschooling their children and may want to stick their child in front of a computer to talk to Missy for 5 minutes. But other people have jumped on it as an opportunity for our rector, Bruce, to say, hey, pop in for virtual coffee hour, say a prayer, be with us, and then if you want to schedule some more specific time, we can set that up for another opportunity. But just giving space to hold space with your faith community in some individual space. So I have no idea how it's going to work, but I know that Sarah and others at VTS do office hours, virtual office hours on a weekly basis. So we're going to try it on a congregational basis. And I'm trying them at times when I know we have a parish school, our middle school students are during their lunch break, and lower school is much more flexible. And I figure 10 a.m. may be the moment when parents want to go talk to Missy on a computer for 5 minutes.
To a question that came up, somebody was saying, what do I do if I have a congregation of 40 people and they're just not so technically savvy? One of the nice things about paid Zoom is that you have not only the video link, but you also have the phone number. And on a paid account, the phone number stays the same. And so if you can convey that phone number to your set of people, they can call in and that might be more familiar to them or an easier access point for them. I know a priest in Maryland, Sarah Lamming, has been doing Compline on Zoom at 7 o'clock every Thursday evening for a couple years now, and has built up a regular community of people, some of whom get on the video chat like we are here, and some of whom call in. And so sometimes, and I've heard a lot of reactivating phone trees. If you've got an 80-year-old in your congregation, they remember how to do a phone tree. Reactivate those phone trees and consider that. I had something else and another thing, this is also an opportunity for clergy to work together. Instead of saying each church is going to live stream or produce their own version of the service, if we're pulling people from different locations, what's to say clergy within a diocese or a deanery couldn't say, we're going to do a service together and give us the opportunity, to collaborate this way and invite all of our folks and facilitate closer relationships amongst our broader community. So lots of great ideas. So we've got about 3 more minutes. I'm going to ask for final thoughts for the good of the order. And we've had a lot of great thoughts here today.
I'll start so I can finish and be done. But I would say, don't be afraid of asking for money. Don't be afraid of telling people that they need to financially still contribute. If we have done a good job as a church of making stewardship an everyday life, then this is a good opportunity to not make it transactional, like, oh, you're here, so you paid when you're here, but rather remind people that this is a time to be generous to the work that this church is doing, and that without it, many of our congregations are gonna suffer a lot. So just it's okay to, even through the video, you will not become a televangelist if through the video you ask people to still support your church. God bless you all.
But if you touch your screen, Lorenzo will heal you right now. Just kidding.
I'll just jump into and say, again, we don't know necessarily what things are going to look like, 2-3 weeks from now, a month from now, and further out. And, I don't think we're going to be, like having to basketball communion from 6 feet away necessarily, but things are definitely going to be different. And this is an opportunity, that we have to kind of rethink the, absolute necessity, of everything that we do, including this idea, is it necessary, was one of the questions right here, to be doing this, to be live streaming. I think if what you do keeps you in community, helps build your community, if you're able to reach out, if people feel connected right now and going forward, if you give them things that they can share, something that they are happy and proud to share with others. And it's not just going to be services. It's not just going to be, morning prayer or whatever. It's also an opportunity for storytelling, for really starting to think kind of outside of, just what we're doing as a necessity right now, and kind of carry that forward, because this is, forcing people into something that a lot of people have been trying to do for a long time. So, not that every challenge is an opportunity type thing, but in this particular case, I think, we do need to kind of be looking ahead and say, this isn't always how it's going to be. What are we learning right now, and how can we carry this forward?
All right. Well, I want to thank all of our panelists again. Meryl's pointing at me. Do you have something to add there? Okay. I want to thank all of our panelists again, and again offer all of ourselves as resources to all of you out there, and thank all of you for joining us today, and to the Seat Network for hosting this. Hang in there, everybody, and be safe and be well, and keep doing the good work.
Bye.